You know, I always like to get to the beginning of things. I think it is there where I can find the right answers. And I believe that much of the chaos in learning is simply because we come to the middle of the stream and we wonder what kind of river it is, where is it heading, instead of simply going back all the way to the beginning, to the spring, to the fall, and then from there we can measure things much more better. So in this new episode of Just a Thought, I would like to talk about how diversity, totality, contributes to the understanding of details of life that could seem hidden from us. Nevertheless, if we could only understand how could we combine, how could we stitch the threads of the fabric of life, we would be able somehow to arrive to that view, to that vantage point, to that perception of how things are connected and how we would be able to extract the right information, whether regarding our body, regarding the galaxy, regarding objects, plants, you name it. Now, for example, this section now is about ratios. If we take a paper like that, and simply we make lines, the distance between this line is equal exactly to the distance of this nail. Now, you know that if we take that nail and we throw it on that paper 100 times, each 100 times around 61 to 62% that nail would cross one of those lines, and the others it will not. Now this is a ratio that we cannot escape whatsoever. I will come to that in a minute. If, for example, as well you make a circle. Now, to be able to understand, for example, the relationship between that circle and between the diameter here, for example, all what you have to do is simply to put the circumference over the diameter. And you get here a ratio, which is 3.14, or we call it as pi. Quite strange that we could see something as such. What is pi? No matter what the circle is, it is all the time connected to a certain ratio between its circumference and between its diameter. There is no escape out of that. At the beginning, 50, 60,000 years ago, people did not understand numbers. There was no numbers. There was only forms and shapes. Like, for example, the shape of the pyramid. So if you have the shape of the pyramid, for example, here, or the triangle, they found out somehow that if you put 4 balls here, and then 3 here, and then 2 here, and then 1 here, you get the number 10. And that is how people at the beginning understood informations, understood how things are connected by simply understanding ratios. So they understood, for example, that the ratio of the hand to the ratio of the arm, for example, is 1 to 2, or the ratio of the leg to the body. Or when somebody, for example, came back and he said, I hunted a buffalo, they would like to know how big is the buffalo in ratio to the form or the volume or the size of a person, of a human. So if you would bring something as that, it would be different from something as that. And according to that, according to the needs, according to what they believe it is important for the survival, they had created a system to understand ratios according to forms. And then from forms, we created numbers. Numbers is only a way to understand ratios. Like, for example, take the Fibonacci rule. The Fibonacci rule is simply we have 1 square here and 1 square here. So 1 and 1. Then we have here 1 and 1 makes 2. 1 and 2 makes 3. 3 and 2 makes 5. 5 and 3 makes 8. 8 and 5 makes 13. 13 and 8 makes 21. And suddenly, if you make a tangent inside those circles, you will find that you will get, for example, the shape of a shell. Those numbers, which are 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and it goes on and on simply by adding one number to the other one, is called the Fibonacci rule, or the golden ratio. In short, it is not just numbers, it's only a ratio between one size to another size, and through that ratio we were able to bring and to make numbers. The idea why I'm saying that is simply not to confuse you with the idea of so much numbers and mathematics, where we think that mathematics and numbers are the original or the origin of how we arrived to the science of mathematics, or how we arrived to measure things. Actually, it is not. It's only ratios, and then from there we came to that. So once we go back a bit to the understanding of ratios, then we will be able to understand how we can apply such ratios upon and unto us. Like, for example, this one in the Fibonacci rule. In the Fibonacci rule, these numbers are the same numbers that you can find, for example, in a tree that is branching. You find that the tree, when it's branching, for example, like this, the first branch that it does, to the second branch it does, to the third branch, to the fourth branch, to the fifth branch, is as well following such ratio, which is 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, and goes on. The same ratio that you find here in the Fibonacci, you find it in the shell. You can measure any shell more or less, and you find it become as such. But why is that? What does this all mean? Let's take, for example, the example of the shell. The shell at the beginning was simply a tube. Something like this, it goes in like this, and goes like this, goes like this. It was simply a tube. It was not a shell as we understand. Now, with evolution, I'm coming back to define the word evolution. With evolution, that creation, that entity we call shell, had found out that it cannot survive in that way. It cannot actually protect itself. It cannot actually find the right food. It cannot actually become bigger on that form. So it had to go around itself. But it went around itself according to that ratio, according to that shape. What does that mean? It means that from the very first beginning, from the Big Bang, that small ball of contents of the mass of the entire universe, that ball, where someone says that it's not more than a basketball, some say it's just only a fist, some say it's just only a bit as such. Nevertheless, that ball, it had a certain amount of gravity, of weight, of magnetic power. So when the explosion took place, if one of those variants would change, like, for example, let's suppose that the gravity was less, the universe would expand much more than it should have been, and we would be in total expansion and total dispersion, and the whole system would not be there. If it was less a bit, then it would contract back again to itself, and then it would be destroyed. So there must have been a ratio to make that universe start from the beginning and continue for the last 14 billion years. And thus, it found out that through that explosion, the best way for example, for a galaxy to expand, to become, to be connected to each other, a galaxy made of 100 trillion stars. Each stars have many amount of planets rotating around it, or not, or more, or whatever. Nevertheless, to be able to put all these together, the galaxy as well have to go into that ratio. It have to go small and then bigger and bigger and bigger. That universal law is what transcends and brings out its effect on that shell, its effect as well on music. The holes that you make, for example, a flute with, as well, those holes, the distance between them follows as well a certain mathematical pattern that as well follows the Fibonacci rule. The ratios between my eyebrows to my eyes, to my nose, to my neck, to my body, all of these are ratios, and that what we assume to be aesthetic, beautiful, harmonious. This is why women are far more beautiful creatures than men, simply because they have ratios a bit better than ours. But such recognition of ratios, whether in plants, like for example in flowers, you will not find flowers who have petals of either 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 but not 4, or 8 but not 6, not 7, or 13 but not 9, not 10, not 11, not 12, and as such. Why would a flower do something like that? Because it had recognized the ratio, the universal ratio, but also to say that a flower recognized, a shell recognized, we recognize is silly. It's not really truthful. What I'm trying to say is that I am not an entity on my own simply because I can think. I am simply a part of that ratio. Exactly like we said that this one is a part of that ratio, so is as well the circle is a part of the ratio between its circumference and its diameter. Everything is connected to each other. One cannot cross out from that. This here, for example, is a trouser that I made. This is and this is a dress that I made with my own hands. And this is a stethoscope that I used 2 days ago to examine one of my patients. And this is a pressure gauge that as well used to examine one of my patients. And this is a camera that I use to make films. And these are tools that I use to engrave. And this is a leather bag that I made myself. Cut, sewed, and put together. And this is a guitar that I play with and I compose music. And with it, my voice starts to sing. Behind me there is also a piano. There's also a flute that I use as well to compose and to play. And this is here is a puzzle that I made myself. I thought of, I cut, I polished, and I did. Now, I'm not showing you all of this to impress you. This is not the idea. I'm trying to show you and tell you there's hundreds of those as well. I went to 6 universities in my life. I study constantly diverse things, whether it was geology or quantum or physiology or nutrition or medicine or mechanics or combustion or you name it. What is the idea behind that? The idea behind that is that through diversity, I will be able to lay my internal and physical and mental structure upon the ratios that had created me. Since I am a part of such ratio, there is no way I could escape ever such a path. I cannot say that I'm free out of that. I'm free within that. The definition of freedom for me is not to rebel against something which had imprisoned me, but on the other hand, on the opposite, is to abide, to recognize a higher law, a higher order that I could belong to. And within this belonging, within this recognition, I'm able to understand and recognize my abilities. This is completely opposite to specialization. This is what I'm trying to say, that through diversity, through doing all of these things, I will be able to find my human ratio to that amazing ratio that started the whole creation, that started the whole sequence of planets and of solar systems, of minerals, of animals, of life, of plants, of oceans, of water, of every single thing around us or beyond us. And happiness and understanding is simply a way to recognize that human ratio and where does it belong in the fabric of the universe, in the fabric of creation, in the fabric of existence, and abide by it, recognize it, understand it, love it, live by it. So to find my human ratio, I have to find it in different, diverse medias. If I am one of those idiots who work in a bank, for example, from 9 to 5, or those other idiots who work in an insurance company, or those other idiots who work in offices from 9 to 5 sitting on a computer, or those the worst idiots ever who work in marketing and business, if I am one of those, then I would be targeting only a very small segment of life, not the whole segment. You see, life is like a circle. And in this circle, there are all the diversity of things. So we have music here, mathematics here, we have geology here, diving, singing, sewing clothes, designing, working with wood, working with the metals, working with glass, learning, touching rocks, and working with the plants, and living with animals, and it goes on and on. It's one big circle. Usually the other people who are those idiots we talked about, they do not have the privilege that I have, or some of you have. They are pushed by one single viral concept called capitalism. Unfortunately held by those who have power, like in the USA, like in Europe. Those are the ones who are trying to break down the rest of the world through the power of money, which is a threat to the very survival of the other nations. But nevertheless, if I would be one of those idiots, then my life would be comprised of a triangle. And this is where my consciousness, this is my existence, this is where I'm aware of who I am at this very moment, and the moment after, and the moment before. And this awareness determines whether I'm happy or not. This awareness determines whether I am capable or not, I am strong or not, I am faithful or not, I'm honest or not. All these characters that define who I am. And if that man, if we are talking about that idiot, then we find out that he has, for example, his work here, and he have his hobby here, and have another hobby here, and that's it. And life goes only according to that. Now, in this shape, he would be out of resonance, out of shape, out of harmony, cut off the perfect structure of existence, of the ratios that he should have been part of. And that is the very simple reason why people are sick. There is nothing else. Why they are unhappy. There is nothing else. Complying to capitalism, becoming more specialized, it will lead us to that fate. After all, what is specialization? You bring a glass of water like this. Now, once the glass of water is filled, what will it do? It will pour out here and there, and then, like those who call themselves academics or scientists, once they specialize in one thing and they go to one point, they start to pour out and tell you this is the right drug, and this is the right instrument, and this is the right telephone, and all of that we are seeing around us is simply damaging further and further our immunity, our perception, our harmony, our life in total. And it is as well very easy to measure actually the the volume of something like that. It is simply to have to measure, for example, the area of the circle down there, and then you multiply by r squared and times the height. But if you are talking about a ball, now that ball, if it is smaller like this, to become bigger, it becomes bigger than this, like this. And the exponentials becomes much greater. The algorithm is completely different from that one. That one is a one-way, straightforward, simple algorithm that you cannot even call it an algorithm. But here, there is a very different ratio, a very different way to try to measure a ball like that. And a ball like that, every time you want to fill, the amount of water and the amount of what you can give out, water is only a symbol of learning and teaching. It becomes huge because we are pouring over a big circle. While here, all what we are pouring is only upon a small circle, because that person, that idiot, had to be frightened from the beginning of his life. Of course, I mean, I'm saying the word idiot, and of course my partner would disagree on this word all the time. She's an amazingly beautiful soul, but still behind her back, I use this word often, especially that she is not here now. But for me, I know that they are victims as well, victims of capitalism. But I had been also an idiot before, and I had been also chasing the same things. I became not an idiot, I became aware simply because I denied such premises. I denied such path. I denied my fear. And I embraced more and more the powers that is surrounding me, filling me with the movement of the wind, with the smell of a flower, with the green of the steppe, with the dunes in the desert, with the silence of earth around me. So, calculating calculating something as such is much, much bigger to give out rather than a simply specialized entity like a glass. So I had decided to become a bowel rather than to become a glass. And in this way, I was able to relate further and further to my ratios and to those universal earthly ratios around me in a completely different way. How do I do that? I do that in different ways. One of them, for example, is my body. I have to understand how does my body function. I have to learn how does it really function deep within. It's incredible that people spend years of their life studying idiotic things like marketing, and they are so sick. They all the time on pills, all the time in antidepressants, all the time having to go to doctors here and there, and they cannot understand what's happened. They cannot understand that it happened simply because they are studying a trivial thing that have no relationship to who they are. How could we go into life doing that? How could we go to school and study about that China, for example, had producing 20,000 tons of magnesium without understanding that what is magnesium in our body? How do we take it? How does it affect the water absorption and the sodium absorption into our body? Without magnesium, we cannot actually have water inside the cell. We can have it outside the cell because the sodium gradient is very much affected with the amount of magnesium. Without it, we cannot have. This is why when I take salt, for example, I take Celtic salt or I take Himalayan salt. I never take table salt because it has only two ingredients, sodium and chloride, and this is very, very dangerous to your body. I don't want to be off the line when I'm talking about. So I go back to my body. I try to understand what am I eating, how important it is not to eat, for example, dairy product or meat. Why? Because I'm not designed for that. Why I'm not designed for that? Because I came 4.4 million years ago, stood up and started walking. I decided to be erect. And I came from an environment that only ate vegetables and fruits and beans. Even beans was not really as much, but still. And suddenly, I found out a shortcut. Instead of all the time have to have a long bowel, I could have a shorter bowel. I can have everything shorter. Everything in the world now getting shorter. Remote controls shorter. Time is becoming, the concept of time is shorter. Everything is becoming as fast as we can. And because of that, evolutionary mistake that we took sometime, someplace, somewhere, because of greed, because again of capitalism, because of that. I forgot now to eat my vegetables, and I'm going to eat idiotic American poisonous entities like McDonald's and like Wimpy and like I don't know what, all these dangerous, dirty food establishments that are spreading beyond any belief. So, in this way, the ratio, my human ratio, is to find my body, how to train it. I will not go into a gym, for example, because it's idiotic to be in a gym and to do the same motion again and again, simply because you want to take the muscles or the foam. The muscles and the foam have to be only a function of the reason, not they are the reason on their own, but because, again, capitalism brings in and encourages and favors the image, not the contents, not the soul, not the spirit. And this is why almost everything we do around us in life is only to favor our image and not our essence. So I understand in this way the amount of food, what kind of food that I have to eat, that I cannot take pills, I cannot take antibiotics. I understand now what they do to me. I understand how they break down the villi in my body. I understand as well, for example, how they cross my blood-brain barrier, something that the brain had worked for millions of years to be able to protect itself, and yet now we are injecting it. We're trying to cheat all this blood-brain barrier through many toxins and through many pills to be able to affect the brain, trying to, in this way, we call it like we are trying to treat Alzheimer, for example, or other diseases like MS, multiple sclerosis, or scleroma, or cancer, or all of these things. But the body had been working all these millions of years to say, no, there is another way. I cannot get cancer. I cannot get multiple sclerosis. I cannot get all of that. I have been working so hard for all these millions of years, and now you idiotic American, you came into this world and you brought evil with you. You brought Israelis with you. You brought, you had washed the brains of the entire European continent, which in turn started to wash the brain of the entire world, making them feel that they cannot live without a reba, they cannot survive without whitening their skin, they cannot survive without having nail polish, they cannot survive without idiotic American black, call it music, which is complete noise. They call rap, and now it is spreading everywhere, that have no essence, no beauty, no nothing at all. You listen to one artwork of Vivaldi or of Rossini or Scheherazade, for example, for Rachmaninoff, and then you say, what is that? I listen sometimes even to this old music by Kulthum, Abdul Halim Hafid, and Shadia, and I tremble because of the beauty and the energy they had. And now we have idiots in Egypt that have no clue what goes on. All what they want to do is try to follow as fast as possible whatever the Americans are doing and be a part of that. Otherwise, they will feel left out of the world. Globalization. The other thing I would find my human ratio is, for example, my concept to money. You know, in 1972, there was no more actual money. You see, money is simply a paper that has been reflects the amount of work that you do. It was started at the days of the Sumerians, when people would have to go and store at the king's storage areas the wheat or the corn or whatever it is, and then they will get a paper, a banknote, that says that you had stored that amount, and it was called the shekel. The shekel, by the way, is still the currency of the people who lived in occupied Palestine, because the word Israel for me does not exist. So in 1972, there was no more equivalence to that amount. There was no more corn or wheat or gold or whatever, and papers were coming out as much as you can. And we are unable to have a system of trust where we can say enough of that and let's just barter. You should see one of my films called Minutos about a completely different structure of money where people could really live, interact, exchange happily by exchanging the amount of time, minutos, minutes, rather than targeting money. So my relationship to money have to be as minimum as possible. And to understand that it cannot bring in its own anything that could make me happy or enlightened. And driving me again and again to the wish that I should stop or find a way to stop the entire system from the very first beginning. Another aspect to find my human ratio is, for example, the inhabitant that I live in. This what you see here is only a temporary, but soon I will be in Siwa, in the desert, in an oasis, building something amazing. Building something which is more and more in harmony with the areas around me. Building something away from noise, away from cellulars, away from streets, away from cars, away from all of that, to be able to come back again to nature. Trying to my best not to have straight lines. Like Antoni Gaudi, I went all the way to Barcelona only to study what I called the organic architecture that Antoni Gaudi had implemented in his designs in the city, where he realized again and again that the eye, once it sees a straight line, it can no longer have the drive or the urge to continue, simply because that straight line goes back again into a very rigid echo inside our spirits that makes us again and again more sterile. This is why all what he did were simple reactions, reflections of the human body, of the organic body, of the plants, of the microorganisms, of trees, of clouds, the world around us. And that what makes you look at his work again and again, and you will never feel that you want to stop. You never feel bored. You never feel suffocated. So my inhabitant is as well is one of the aspects where I could find my human ratio. With people, as well, I have to find out the right people to be with. I cannot be with people who are capitalists. I cannot be with people who all the time think of money. I have to value friendship. I have to value people who had worked on their own ideals and invest into that. A good friend is like a good mirror that could show the best of you, and a bad friend, there's no bad friends because the two words do not conjugate together. Nevertheless, the bad friends are those who give you the bad image of yourself. All the time targets the bad corners of yourself rather than giving you the strength and the willpower and the faith that the good, beautiful angles of your potential, of your abilities. We are not who we are what we can be. And that is a great difference. There's always this potential that drives us to become better and better, but on the opposite way, there's always this potential to make us worse and worse if we surrender to capitalism, to people who are slaves to capitalism. I have as well to find my aspects ratio in things such as the environment around me. I have to fight for a cleaner air. I have to fight against pollution. So, for example, I have to show you one thing, This here, that you see here, for example, this is a hydrogen generator. I installed 2 of this in my car. And another one, this is a dry type, and another one which is wet type that I installed and I made myself. This one was made by a friend of mine, but the ones that I installed I made myself in my car, so that I will use water where I can break H2O into hydrogen and oxygen and then use that hydrogen and gas and put it inside. That gives you can say between 10, 20, and believe me, until 90% of petrol. But all the petrol companies would not like this idea, because who are the owners of this petrol companies? Mainly Americans and exotic Arabs, who have no ideals and no values whatsoever, and all what they want is to deprive this earth of her blood, because oil at the end is the blood. of the earth, and the more we are taking it, the more we are killing it. Let me not say it, but her. You know that in 2012, half the amount of petrol all around the world had been used. And in 2018, half the amount of gas all around the world had been used. And it's incredible how we want to go to channels and to resources that does not bring goodness onto this earth. This is why we have now this huge amount of pollution. This is why we have this CO2 greenhouse. This is why we have having the glaciers and the North Pole and the South Pole melting. This is why the water is rising. And in 30, 40 years, you will not see any more Bangladesh or Miami or many other places around the world. Simply because we are driven by greed, driven by capitalism. No one is coming to tell us, hey, listen, you cannot do that, because politicians are corrupt. Politicians, the word politician should be synonymous to the word snake, poison, or virus. I found as well my human ratios in understanding time. Time when to sleep, when to wake up. Time where I can synchronize myself to the hours of the day, to the morning. Synchronize myself to the times where I should go to sleep. To have a deep sleep. Without deep sleep, the adrenocorticotropic hormones increases, affects your kidneys, affects your blood pressure, affects your sodium and water retention. It affects your immunity system. It affects gluconeogenesis. Affects the formation of glucose in your body. Affects everything. And yet, how many really of us get good sleep? How could we, when we had invented lights that goes on and on and on? When we had invented TVs that you can sit on and just could change between 200 to 300 channels all around the world, trying to feed your anxiety, trying to feed your fear, trying to feed your depression with anything that could take your mind away from such reasons, and yet in vain you cannot, and you become worse and worse and worse. You know, this is also one of the factors, for example, why we have a huge amount of diabetic persons around the world. Because after they take this idiotic job from 9 to 5, doing something for someone else to get money, they go back and all what they can do is just simply to sit and watch TV and order as much fat food and fast food as possible, bringing their insulin to a high level until we come to a state of insulin resistance. And that in turn will lead us to leptin resistance. This is something that you can see in my other videos where I explain why people are obese and why they are eating too much and why we are this, but not in this video. Nevertheless, my understanding of who I am into time, my understanding that there is an internal clock inside of me, a clock that could synchronize so much with the outer clock that goes on. I remember that one time they had an experiment where they found some shells, and they took them from one coast, and those shells would open and close at a certain time in accordance with the moon. And they took them all the way, far away, 2 hours from the place where they lived in, and those shells started to open and close still at one point, according to what they remembered of the moon movement. And then after 2 weeks, they could not do that, and they started to open and close according to the new one. And this is what happened as well with us. We had forgotten that synchronicity with that unbelievable system around us, and we became specialized instead of being diverse and total. Technology. Yes, I use a very good camera. Now I'm recording myself with this. I'm playing, for example, on a organ because I cannot have a huge, for example, piano in the space there. And yes, I'm sewing this with the sewing machine that it has, but there is a certain limit. If all the time I have to sit in front of this devilish apparatus called computer and taking, now people are going like this. I mean, you go inside the restaurant and people are not eating with each other. They're just sitting, the whole family, even the kids. Each one have his own way out of being together and out into a world which is not even real, because they cannot anymore accept this. Why? They are victims again of capitalism. They are again victims of cement, of roads, of noise, of cars, of money, of banks, of communes like those in Denmark who all the time threaten you if you do not do this and this and this. You will be punished according to this and this and this. All the time they are pushed to make money. For whom? For whom? Who is benefiting from all of that? The 5% up there, all the time have 100 watches and 20 cars and 3 yachts and God knows what, and houses all around the world while the rest of the world is dying. Did you know that 600 people in this world own what 4.4 billion people own? Is that fair? What kind of system? Make Bill Gates, for example, that idiot who just simply made a program as if he had invented, for example, the soul of life, or he found out, for example, how souls would be transported from this world to another world and how they would be enlightened in the other world. That idiot became the richest man in the world. Why is that? Why he would not get that amount that could be equal to the work that he did, no matter how this work had been spreading all around the world? But we don't have this. This is capitalism. Capitalism is a virus. Again, I remind you, capitalism is a virus. It's a poison killing you. And used to kill me, but no thanks, not anymore. You know, there is a graph that I would like to draw to you. It is like this. And if this is awareness, and this is time, normal people who go in that triangle that we talked about to be able to become aware through time, they go in the line like this. Those who claim to be enlightened, like clairvoyants and like yoga teachers and like now there is this soul coach and the body coach and all these strange spiritual names that they come on. Those ones, they are really, really one of the worst you can even imagine, because they are trapped between two worlds and they don't have the courage to just jump to the other one. Those ones, they go like this, up and down, up and down, up and down, but at the same, maybe a bit higher than the normal individual who is trapped from the beginning by being one of those idiots into an insurance company or a big IT company or whatever it is. But if we can see the amount of awareness of how the graph would go between awareness and time into somebody who is diverse, who decided to take the risk and become diverse, it would be like this. It goes slowly like this, and then it becomes a curve, and then it becomes so vertical that it takes so little time to become aware of the huge things because of the ability to connect. I want to end this episode with one thing. One time I saw this symbol. It was a man standing like this, with the hand like this, and here there was having a stick, and it goes with legs like this. And on the other hand, he went out with a circle like this. And that was found 40,000 years ago in a cave. And it broke my mind. I learned symbols and I teach symbols. But I couldn't understand this one. What is that? Until one time I found, by chance, I was just, plugging a plug, or I don't know what I'm doing. Then I found the simple button of on and off. The simple button of on and off, it is something like this with a circle and a line. And I realized, this is on and this is off. That man, 40,000 years ago, went outside the door of his cave and simply opened his hands, and he realized at one point that he was perfect. He was everything. He was everything because finally he was able to have the imagination and the power of understanding, recognizing himself into within this unbelievable, beautiful fabric around him, connecting to animals and plants and days and nights and moon and sun and rain and thunder, all of that. But then he found as well that he was a stick, he was nobody. He could vanish. That circle could collapse. And he could die in nothing, in no time, because of a simple hunt that failed, or because he fell down, or because of a fire that took place in the forest. That realization between those two aspects, being perfect and being no one, that is, my friend, the concept and the heart of diversity. I preach diversity against specialization. I preach socialism, community against capitalism. Thank you.